Hello students, I am Professor Plinio Monteiro in one more lecture, and now I'm going to discuss with you what are the entry modes, or what are the kind of marketing entry strategies that a company can use when choose to enter into a new market. Our learning objectives will be identify, classify, and explore different market entry modes. Also, I'm going to explain the advantages and disadvantages of different export and business implications. Also, explain the advantages and disadvantages of using different intermediate entry modes like licensing, franchising, joint ventures, strategic alliance, and other options for entering into the market with a partnership. Finally, I will describe the main hierarchical modes and compare the main types to make a foreign direct investment when you choose to enter into a new market. But what exactly is an entry mode? Basically, it's an institutional arrangement and made by your company when you try to enter into a new market. So it's a way that you're going to deliver your or develop your business model in order to deliver the products into a foreign market. And the choice that you have when you when you're trying to enter into a new market, you have a huge impact on business performance, and also can the investments can make you dependent on the things that can happen in a market for a long period of time. And because of that, the choice of how you're going to develop your business model to enter into a new market will have a direct effect on some opportunities and risks for your business. We can say that this is the most important decision for entering into a new market. When you choose to enter into a new market, and the way that you're planning to do that can be driven by many different factors. First of all, the risk aversion. Some entry modes will require more investments, and the return, you need to wait more time to have return on your investment. And other ways of entering into the market, they are very fast, and also they will not really consume a lot of resources. But of course, usually the return that you can have when you have these less risky entry modes, the return is usually smaller than the potential that you have when you invest more money, time, and other resources for entering into a new market. So depending on your risk aversion, you may choose from one to another option for entry into the market. Also, the urge to come on foreign operations can be something that will determine the option to enter into a new market. For instance, some entry modes you're going to give control and give a lot of freedom from other partners for other partners to use your business model, to use your resources, and they can operate by using your resources without it can be very hard for you to control what they're doing. And in other instances, you can have direct control over everything. Basically, if you build everything from scratch, you have all your business there, your people operating there, of course it'll be very costly, time consuming, and also you need to invest many resources to run this kind of model for your business. But since you are controlling everything, you can be sure that everything will be relatively under your managers, your control. Another factor that we can think is the value chain considerations. For instance, are there any partner in the country that can help you establishing your business there? Do you believe that some suppliers can represent one opportunity or a risk for you when you try to enter into a new market? And these value chain considerations can be very important to the decision on your entry mode. Finally, some sector and industry factors can make a clear definition on the best or the more common entry mode in a market. Let's give an example in services. So it's very common for restaurants and chains in the food sector to enter into a new market by using franchising. So basically, franchising or licensing. So they can give the rights to other people. So these other parties can use your knowledge, use your business model to operate in foreign countries, and then you're going to receive a fee, a percentage of their revenues usually, and some additional payments from them. And in that case, it's a very common way to enter into a new market with this kind of operation. In the other way, when you have high-tech products and when you have some secrets for your production or your technology, it will be much more difficult for you to give away the rights for your items, your devices. So in this kind of sector, you usually have two options. To export, usually it's very cheap to develop the technology in countries that have a lot of educated people, a lot of technology and innovation. Then you can send the rights for a third party, or you can have a subsidiary just to produce your items in countries under development, like India, Bangladesh, or Brazil. And then you can produce that your devices in these countries, and then you can sell these products to all over the world using these different value chain considerations and also some factor related to the industry. But but sometimes countries can create non-trade or non-tariff or tariff barriers to avoid you to export your product unless you start producing in that country. In that case, if you have a very attractive country to enter, usually you're going to establish your factory there, and then you're going to produce everything in that country. For instance, in Brazil, it's very common to have many different manufacturers of microelectronic devices, because you have a lot of taxes if you try to import these products outside from Brazil. And because of that, many companies will establish their business here. Many of them will go to the free trade area of Manaus, in Portuguese, Zona Franca de Manaus. And there they have some government incentives, and then they can assemble products there and sell to all over the country. Usually the production of parts are in the southeast of Brazil, then they send the parts for the north of Brazil, and then they assemble the product there and then return back to the product to all over the country to sell in the southeast, the south of Brazil, and northeast of Brazil. As you can imagine, this is very costly, and this is one reason that our microelectronic devices are so costly in Brazil. This is a model that will tell us what kind of factors will determine the way that you're going to choose one over another entry mode. Let's start with presenting the dependent decision or the dependent variable in this model. In this model, we are trying to explain how the probability of a company to choose a more risky and more internalizing entry mode. What is that? Some entry modes will require from you a lot of resources. You're going to compromise a lot of people, time, and money to develop your business, your foreign operations. And this means that you're basically internalizing all the decisions. You're picking up these decisions and bringing these decisions to you. Everything will be under your control, but of course, it will be very costly and very time consuming. And in the other way, you can have some entry modes that will not you don't need to invest a lot of time and money to start having operations abroad. And as we will see later, the hierarchical modes, that ones when you invest everything by yourself, when you have your people operating there, you have everyone belonging to your business operating in foreign countries. These are the most internalized methods for entering into a new market. And in the other side, we have here the export modes. In that case, these are the export modes that that you need to invest less to have operations abroad. In that cases, it's a more externalized entry mode. It means that basically you don't need to have a lot of your resources invested in your business model to operate abroad. So let's look to different factors that can increase the internalization of your entry mode and what factors can decrease the degree of internalization of your entry mode. Let's start with the product. If you have a lot of product differentiation advantage, so if you have some secrets, you have a lot of patents, some special technologies, or some way of running your business model, and these are sources of competitive advantage, probably you're going to keep that with you. You're not going to give away these secrets to other people. And because of that, also have some more differentiated product, you're going to choose more internalized entry modes, like the hierarchical entry modes. Also, if you have a lot of product complexity, if your product is so complex, you need to take care of all steps of production, assembly, and logistics. Probably you need to have your people, your resources working directly on that. And because of that, if you have a very complex product, you probably will choose a more internalized entry mode. On the other side, if you don't have a lot of complexity, probably you can choose one export mode. And also, if your product is basically a commodity, exports will be alright. Let's look to other factors. Internal factors. Firm size. Usually, bigger firms will choose more internalized entry modes. If you are really a big firm, you have a lot of very skilled people working for you, you have a lot of resources, oh, so let's invest everything by ourselves. Then, if you lose something, it's not be a big loss for us, and we can win a lot of money. So usually, big firms prefer more internalized entry modes. And also, companies with more international experience tend to choose more internalized entry modes. Since they know how to operate in different markets, they are aware on how to manage cultural differences and how to use that to create competitive advantage, then for these kind of firms will be alright to invest more in internalized entry modes. Let's look to another factor, desired mode characteristics. First, if you are risk averse, probably you're going to choose more export modes or intermediate modes because you don't want to invest a lot of money because you believe that, okay, I can lose everything that I'm investing. So if you have a lot of risk aversion, you're going to choose more externalized entry modes. If you need to have a lot of control, then you're going to choose more hierarchical approach, more internalized approach. And if you want to have more flexibility, it's not a good idea to invest a lot of money in different countries. If you want to have flexibility, it's better for you to have more externalized entry modes, like exporting or having some licensing or franchising to operate abroad. Let's look to other factors, the transaction-specific factors. So, the testing nature of know-how. So, if you know how to make the transaction, if you know what's happening in the sector, you can invest more time and money because the risk will be smaller for you. Also, if you have a lot of opportunistic behavior within your partners or your suppliers, and this will increase the transaction costs. For instance, you're selling your product to a home, you're exporting your product, but you know that the companies that are buying your product in the foreign country, they're selling the product with a lot of profit. And this is the case of the existence of our opportunistic behavior. And this will increase your transaction costs. So you are aware that you're losing money to have relations with these external companies. In that case, companies will have more incentives to have their own operations abroad. And because of that, it will increase the usage of internalized entry modes. And finally, let's look to some external factors. First of all, social cultural distance between home country and host country. If you're entering into a country where the cultural traits, the cultural characteristics are different from your home country, basically you're going to have a challenge. You need to know how to merge your business with the foreign culture if you try to invest to have a factory or to have an office abroad. In that case, probably the company will choose a less risky entry mode because they are aware that once they try to establish their own business in foreign countries, they can have a lot of problems arising given the cultural difference of people from home country and people from host country working together. Also, the country risk demand uncertainty. In that case, imagine that you have this year have a huge demand, but you are not sure if this demand will will stay high in the future. So why you're going to invest a lot of money to establish your business there in that country if you don't know if the demand will be higher enough during a long period of time to allow you start having a return on investment. In that case, if you have a lot of uncertainty in the demand or risks in the country, probably you're going to choose less risky entry modes, and these are the methods related to exports and intermediate entry modes. If you're entering into a market that is so big and a market that is growing very fast, probably you're going to choose to invest by yourself, to have your factories, you have your offices in this foreign market. The reason why is that in big markets you have more certainty about the size of the demand, and then even during a crisis you can keep a high level of sales to pay back your investments. Also, the direct and indirect trade barriers. If you're trying to enter into a country where you have a lot of direct and indirect trade barriers, probably it's better for you to have business in that country, to establish your office there. Because if you try to have an export to that country, or to have even some intermediate entry modes, then the country can create barriers that will diminish, that will vanish your profits. In that case, it's very common to establish a more risky entry mode using a more internalized approach like the hierarchical modes or the intermediate mode or some types of intermediate modes. Finally, we have the intensity of competition If you have a lot of competition in that country, probably you're going to invest less. So you're going to use more externalized entry modes to start by exporting your products. But if you don't have a lot of competition, then you're going to choose more hierarchical modes like that use more of your resources. And finally, the small number of relevant export intermediaries available will make you to choose more hierarchical modes. So suppose that you're trying to export, but you don't have the buyers in the home country, in the host country, or you don't have partners that you can establish business to start operating in that country. In that case, basically, there is no other way. You need to invest and start the business by yourself. Let's give one example. In Brazil, we have the presence of very big firms, foreign big firms operating in Brazil, many of them with a lot of international experience. Also, the market size in Brazil is very high, and also our government established a lot of trade barriers, direct and indirect trade barriers, tariff and non-tariff trade barriers. Also, it's sad to say, but the intensity of competition in Brazil is very low. In general, you don't have very advanced industries, you don't have a lot of competitors. If you can think about the automobile market, we don't have a lot of companies producing here automobiles, and in that case, all these factors will push international competitors to enter into Brazil by having their own factory, to establishing their business here if they're trying to enter into Brazil. Even when you have some factors like the social cultural distance between United States and European countries and other developed countries when you compare to Brazil. Also, when you have a lot of country risk and demand uncertainty because of economical factors, even those factors usually they are not enough to make those firms that are trying to operate in Brazil to make them to choose another entry mode, and then they choose to enter in using their hierarchical entry mode. And you can use this model to analyze what is the best option to choose one entry mode given your conditions and the scenario of home country and the host country that you are trying to operate. So let's take a look in the main types of entry modes that we are going to discuss in the next videos. First, let's look to the export modes. Basically, this is the basic and the low risk entry mode. This is the most traditional, and basically you're going to make sales from home country to the host country. You need to have someone producing your product in home country, and then you have the buyer in the host country. Usually you have low control over what people are doing with your product there, if they are selling the right marketing channels, the communication that they're using to promote your product there. But also it's a very low risk because anything that you have almost nothing to lose, because if you sell to someone this product, your risk is just that this person, this company will not buy your product again in the future. But beside that, the risk in terms of business is very low. And also you have a lot of flexibility. This means that you can enter in many countries, you can establish relations with many different businesses operating in different regions in the world. What are the intermediate entry modes, also known as a contractual mode? This is the case when you use one third party, one intermediate, to help you entering into a new market. In that case, you depend heavily in the partnership with another company, usually a company that belongs to the host market. And we can find these intermediate entry modes as an organizational arrange between different companies to explore a new foreign market. Sometimes you can have a partnership with a local company, or you can have a partnership with another business that are not present in the market, in that market yet, and then you can make a partnership like a joint venture, and then you can start exploring that country, that market. And let's look to the hierarchical modes. What is behind the hierarchy? The idea is that you have a part of your business operating abroad, and then you're going to have a hierarchy. You're going to have your headquarters, and then you're going to have your subsidiaries, or you're going to have a local headquarters or regional headquarters. And this structure will be a hierarchy of your business of a multinational company. In that case, you have a lot of control. You can control the operations basically directly by yourself. It's a very risky approach because you need to invest a lot of money and time to have this business in different parts in the world. And also, you don't have a lot of flexibility. If you choose to leave a country, it will be very hard to sell your assets, to sell all you built in that country. In that case, you can lose a lot of money. And this is one reason why many businesses, when they enter into a new market, they stay there. If they have factories, if they have buildings, if they have assets, companies will stay in that country for a long period of time, even when they are losing money. Because if they try to leave, sometimes they can lose more money than to keep them. If, for instance, if you compare on how much money they are going to lose by operating in that country. And this was an introduction on the entry modes. In the next videos, I'm going to discuss the different types of entry modes and how you can choose between the different alternatives given your contest. So that's it, and see you in the next video. Bye.